Hello everyone, welcome back. I'm back. Yay! Whole new location as you can see. I moved, I got internet again. That was a pain in the ass. I'm not going to get into it because you don't want to hear about that. So yeah. But you're not here to hear me gripe anyway. You're here for a book review. And today I am talking about the Van Helsing Paradox by Evelyn Chartres. I think that's how you pronounce that. French is not a strong language of mine. I do not know it very well. So, knowing how to pronounce certain little areas, I'm sorry if I mispronounced it. But anyway, to the book review. Let's starting with plot. So, the plot, it's basically following Clara Gray from the time she's a child into her 30s, I think it's like early to mid 30s, as she experiences the paranormal, supernatural, unknown, basically in terms of vampires and ghouls. She does learn through a little bit of exposition that werewolves exist, and I'm pretty sure there's other stuff that exists that didn't really get it, that the book didn't really get into. But since they're not in the book itself, I'm not counting it. I'm just focusing on the ghouls and the vampires. So Claire's parents die, and because they're in a company town, her sister ship her off to a convent to live with some nuns. Clara then realizes that vampires do exist, and she is shipped off to a whole other area in Europe where she continues Bible study and she continues all this other stuff. But she also learns stuff like combat. She learns how to fight vampires. She learns how to deal with this stuff. And throughout her training, she becomes better and better and better. Now, you don't really get to see most of the training montages, and, well, that's kind of a shame. I definitely understand the artistic choice behind this because it would really bog down the book. You don't really need to see it. So, there's a lot of time jumps between chapters. So, while the book in itself is not especially big, I mean, it's 200 some pages, it's average size, it's not a bad sized book. But, you know, it focuses more on what Claire is doing and the certain battles that she fights. Like, there's a whole ordeal that happened during World War One, which honestly I really enjoyed seeing. And, you know, you get to watch her become a flapper, and, you know, she's this flapper badass vampire hunter assassin, which is a bunch of words that I never thought I'd ever get to use in conjunction. So, thank you for that. I'm actually very, very happy to be able to say something like that. The only really part where the plot really lost me, or not really lost me, but kind of it switched gears. It switched itself. Was for the first part of the book, you really think Claire is going after this one vampire, and then about 3/4, 2/3 of the way through, it switches gears, and you find that she's after this whole other vampire. And, you know, well, that's definitely not a bad thing, and I'll get to why I like that in the writing part. But in terms of plot, because it switches gears, I am going to have to give it a 4 out of 5. It's definitely not a bad thing. It's definitely not something that I hated or even disliked in any shape, way, or form, but it just wasn't it just wasn't entirely consistent throughout. So I'm giving it the 4 out of 5, and it kind of pains me to even knock any points off. So let's talk about character. And the main character, Clara Gray, is a very interesting character. But I mean, when you watch your mother die basically right in front of your eyes, your father had already died by ghoul, you're sent off to a covenant to learn how to fight vampires, it's very hard to not be an interesting character. It is really hard to not be interesting. So, Clara, almost by default, is an interesting character. But, yeah. That's actually not my biggest problem with Clara, and actually my problem with Clara isn't even really a problem because I can explain it away, is she does come off as a bit of a Mary Sue at times. She seems like she is very, very good at way too many things, way too often in the book, But because there's such time gaps between the chapters, you don't, and as I said in plot, you don't see the training. You don't see at least the majority of the training that she does. So, despite her coming off as a bit of a Mary Sue and being too good at things, it's actually really explainable. So I don't actually think that she is one, and yeah, I have no problem with Claire's character at all. The only part where the character actually does tend to lose at least a point, just one point, is due to the sake that there's a lot of side characters, but they're not really in a lot of it. Like, you'll get these side characters, and they'll be in it for a chapter, 2 or 3, and then they're just gone for a while. So when some of them do come back, you kind of have to remind yourself who these characters are and where you saw them. Especially when it comes down to the nuns, because there's a lot of nuns for the first chunk of the book. Because, she's growing up, she's learning who and what she can do, what all the vampires are and all this other stuff. So, there's a bit of a learning curve there, and there's a lot of nuns around, so you kind of got to remind yourself which nun that this person is. And that's really the only reason I'm knocking a point off, is because I kind of had to remind myself who these characters were. It's not that these characters were flat or hollow or had nothing behind the eyes or anything like that. Like, these were all really interesting characters. It's just, I had to remind myself which ones that they were when they showed up way later in the book. So, yeah, character is another 4 out of 5. And it's just for it's just this little tiny reason. So, yeah. Imagination and research. There is a lot of imagination that went into this book, and I can't even really explain half of what it is without spoiling any of it. So you kind of got to read the book to get the full brunt of the imagination. Research, oh boy. I am astounded at how much research that this woman did for just the terms and slang alone. Like, I can set something in the 1930s, but I wouldn't have near the slang that this woman used. And it made the book feel authentic. It made the time period feel authentic, and I loved that. It was so great to see. It was so amazing to read for that reason. So, imagination and research, full on 5 stars. Amazing job. Writing. The part where people tend to just kind of tune out a little bit. Don't tune out with this one. This one's actually really important. So, the writing style. She's really, really easy to read. The book was really easy to read. It was really easy to get into. I really appreciated that. And the way that she made the book, like the way she paced the book and having these massive time jumps between chapters, well, a lot of books that wouldn't really work. It does with this one. It's like I said with the plot, with it changing gears and switching gears. This is something that you would see with something like a TV show. And that's kind of how I felt reading the book, is that I'm just reading a TV show. And frankly, the way that this book is written, the way that this book is paced out, this could work as a TV show. Probably as, like a mini-series or something like that. Because you got Clara as a kid, you got the first few episodes or the first half season or even quarter season of her growing up, and then you got a chunk of her going after this initial vampire. But then you find out that there's this bigger vampire in charge of things. Like, that's how you would do a TV show. And that style of writing and the way that she did all that, I loved it. I was really, really happy with that. I was really impressed with it, because it's not the style of writing and the way of pacing the book that a lot of writers can A, pull off, and B, have a story that works with it like that. So writing gets a full-on 5 stars as well. Like, it's great. It was really, really well done. And now we get to the ending. And spoilers ahead. This is the point where I do spoilers. I will have a time slot down there for when you can skip ahead, or when I will give my rating. So, we're in the last few chapters. Clara is going against this big bad vampire. And she fights the big bad vampire. And she kind of wins, but kind of loses at the same time. Like, she really, really hurts this vampire. But then these gods show up and they shock the shit out of her and the vampire. She basically tricks the gods into killing the vampire for her because she just couldn't. So yeah, the gods kill this vampire, basically killing Clara in the process. Clara goes up to heaven, becomes an angel for them, like a legit angel. Probably, I think an archangel based on how it was being portrayed. Not entirely sure, but yeah. And then she's being sent back down because somebody didn't get basically their free will was infringed upon, so she's got to go back down, setting things up for a sequel. I have to say, I really liked this ending. And I liked it for not the reason that you'd think. I liked this ending because it was something I didn't expect. It's something that worked in the universe, and I didn't feel cheated by it. So I really don't know what more I can say about this ending. I mean, I thought it was amazing. I loved it. And I walked away from the book feeling like I just got one hell of a ride. So the ending alone, 5 stars. So all in all, the book is a straight up 9 out of 10. I greatly enjoyed reading it. I greatly enjoyed every aspect of it. Like, the couple nitpicks that I did that lost it a couple points, all in all, it really didn't take a whole lot away from the book itself. I greatly loved it, and I'm pretty sure the vast majority of you will greatly enjoy it as well. And that's about all I got for you guys. Tune in next time when I do another book review. I'm not going to tell you which one it is, but I will say one thing. It is by a fairly well-known indie author.